Welcome to Clause 8, the #1 podcast on intellectual property. This special edition comes from the VIA Licensing Alliance Bridge Summit 2025 in San Francisco, where innovators, policymakers, and industry leaders explored the most pressing challenges and opportunities in SEP licensing today. Hosted by Eli Mazour and brought to you by TradeSpace, where ideas take flight.
Now, Philips is an organization with a very large in-house intellectual property capability, but nonetheless, Philips's philosophy is to support patent pools. We were one of the first owners of MPEG LA when it created that first pool back in 1997, and we continue to be owners. We are a part owner of VIA. We are a part owner of Access Advance. We continue to invest in the development of these patent pools because we believe it is the most balanced solution to licensing patents, in that it creates a level market for a level playing field, I should say, for the licensees, because they all take the same terms and conditions. It reduces the friction between the bilateral licensing may result in, because people feel I have to negotiate individually with many different patent owners, whereas they do the one-stop shop at the patent pools and reduce their manpower needs to get the licenses that they should get.
So I want to return to that, but I guess I want to talk a little bit about Philips, because I guess people who are outside of the licensing space, when they think of Philips, maybe they think of the brand on the light bulbs or some medical devices, obviously yes. A very old European company. Can you tell us a little bit about how did Philips end up in the licensing their technology, and why is it, I guess,
sure,
such an important part of the business?
Yeah, it goes back to what I mentioned. If you invest a lot in R&D, you need a vehicle to get the return on that investment. It occurs commercially in your products, but it also occurs through the licensing of patents. I can't speak with knowledge as to the very earliest licensing of Philips, but my recollection goes back to the late 1970s time frame, early 80s, when the CDs were developed for the marketplace. And that was largely a joint effort between Philips and Sony. And they created the CD players, which then evolved and grew into the DVD and Blu-ray players.
Yeah.
And that technology was then licensed to bring the technology to other companies to make CD players, so that whoever bought their music on a CD could find a CD player, whether it was built by Philips in Europe or Sony in Japan, but to find that technology worldwide. So in order to spread that technology, Philips and Sony together licensed the CD-DVD technology. That's my recollection of, let's say, earliest modern-day licensing of Philips. That then evolved into both Sony and Philips, in fact, were joint owners of MPEG LA when that was formed in 1997. So it continued a trend of getting a return on investment through the licensing of patents.
And obviously there's companies with, I guess, a pure pedigree of being implementers, where they just create products based on others' technology, or sure. Innovators. I guess, what kind of perspective do you think Philips has that maybe is unique, that it made products and knows what it takes to sell a product, the margins that are involved in that? Because I guess that's a complaint that you hear from implementers a lot of time, that by the time they pay all the technology licenses, there's not any money left over. But I guess, what perspective do you think Philips has on that?
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah. Well, ideally, these companies should be factoring into their bill of materials, just like the cost of the plastic for a display screen or the power module. They should be factoring into their bill of materials before they put the product on the market what the cost of intellectual property will be, because that is a component. It should go into the bill of materials. We Philips do that. When we are going to put a new product on the market, we do a risk assessment, it's called, to understand who will have patents in this space, who are we likely going to need licenses from, seeing their patents, and what might that cost? And that gets factored in. And I can tell you, for example, years ago, Philips was thinking of making tablets, but we did the risk analysis. We found that, we weren't going to be able to make a competitive product when we took into account all the intellectual property costs that we would have to pay. And let me give you an example on that that's quite interesting. They are factored into DVD players. Today, if you go out to buy a DVD player, the least expensive one you will find is still about $29 or euros, basically the same equivalency there. Why haven't CD and DVD players dropped down to the $5, $10 price range? The plastic and electronics is only about $5. It's the fact that the DVD manufacturers do include the IP costs. And they tend to be, depending on whether you have cross licenses in place or whatever, they tend to be $15 to $20 or euros per device. So here, the costs are factored in. It's not part of the profit margin. The profit margin on $5 of electronics and plastics is, $1, whatever. It's added to the cost of the components, and that cost is then in the final product. So there isn't this complaint, why are you asking me for IP fees? I don't have it in my profit margin. Because they took the correct approach and put it in their bill of materials for the final product that's out on the marketplace.